I'm Shelley Klingerman. I'm a ITIA board member. I'm also a founding member of Launch Terre Haute, Next Studios. I founded my own company, Stiletto Agency, and am now the founder of a new nonprofit called Project Never Broken. It's my pleasure to introduce Senator Todd Young. Todd Young represents Hoosiers in the United States Senate. He currently serves on the Senate committees on finance, foreign relations, commerce, science, and transportation, and small business and entrepreneurship. A fifth-generation Hoosier, Todd grew up watching his parents work hard in order to support the family. His first jobs were delivering newspapers, mowing lawns, and providing janitorial services for his family business. Todd is a graduate of the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. He graduated with honors in 1995 and accepted a commission into the U.S. Marine Corps. In 2000, Todd was honorably discharged from the Marine Corps as a captain. While serving in the Marines and working as a business consultant, Todd earned an MBA and his law degree. In 2010, he ran for Congress and served 3 terms representing Indiana's 9th district. He was elected to U.S. Senate in 2016. Todd married his wife, Jenny, in 2005 and worked together at a small law firm in Paoli, Indiana, started by Jenny's great-grandfather. Today, they reside in Greenwood, Indiana, with their 4 young children, a son, Tucker, and 3 daughters, Annalise, Abigail, and Ava. Please join me in welcoming Senator Todd Young.
Well, thank you, Shelley, and it's so nice to visit with all these leaders and the tech field and the world of commerce and government. I know we have members of the General Assembly who visited with you today, Republican and Democrat alike, which is fantastic and highly appropriate, I think, because the areas of technology and innovation certainly don't break upon party lines. There's broad agreement that we need to continue to advance as a country and as a state in these fields. I wouldn't even call it a sector per se anymore. I mean, it's no longer a vertical. Technology is such a part of all of our lives, and it's integrated into every business and every business model. That narrative, however, is so different than Washington, D.C. And of course, is where I spend much of my working time. I live back here in Indiana. And there's a lot of principled disagreement, to put it charitably, that's going on in our national politics these days. But blessedly, one of the areas where we're not seeing disagreement is the need for America to catalyze more innovation, to build on some of the successes that we've historically seen coming from our doers and dreamers and our creators and our entrepreneurs and investors, and really accelerate those efforts in a bipartisan way. Another place that's bipartisan in the U.S. Senate is the gym. Yeah, you heard that correctly. The gym, where I work out in the morning. It happens to be the very gym where a prominent Democrat with the last name Schumer also works out every day. And neither Chuck nor I, in all candor, are known as techies. I'm not quite in the Luddite range. I mean, I actually carry an iPhone and attended an engineering school. I gratuitously will share that with others sometimes to show that I have some modicum of understanding of engineering and technology. But my brother's the real techie, if you will, in the family. But Chuck's, let's just say, less technologically sophisticated than maybe some of my colleagues and certainly most in this room. In fact, Chuck still carries a flip phone. And when he sits on the recumbent bike every morning, he's known to be talking oftentimes very loudly. He's having private conversations on the flip phone. That can be a great source of intelligence. So please, no sharing back to Chuck. But Chuck and I have developed a friendly and respectful and very healthy relationship, and we've compared notes about some of our policy interests. And I discovered some time ago that one of the areas of real interest for Chuck is China, some of the adventurism they've been involved in recent years that threatens the United States and our Western values and our system of free enterprise, and the convergence between China and technology, their investment in technology, their attempt to ensure that they dominate some key areas of technology. I happen to share all of these policy interests with Chuck Schumer. So together, I don't see, back to my proficiency with technology. I think I just turned that off. But so together, Chuck and I resolved to find some way to work together, some way to advance our common interests and the interests of the country and the very sorts of things that I think all of you are interested in, which is seeing that the United States of America does all we can to win the 21st century. You see, China has been investing billions of dollars annually to make sure that the 21st century is the first Chinese century. And we've maintained a defensive posture vis-a-vis China, resorting to defensive countermeasures when they engage in predatory economic activity. We've utilized tariffs and export controls and sanctions. But Senator Schumer and I agreed that we needed to play offense. More specifically, we needed to make sure that we give our citizens the tools to out-innovate, out-compete, and ultimately outgrow the Chinese Communist Party, working with our partners and allies. That's how we will win the 21st century. The legislation that we put forward, originally entitled the Endless Frontier Act, or EFA, is not simply about beating China, though. I really want to emphasize that. Both Chuck and I understand that we can use this moment in history to become a better version of ourselves, just as we did during the last Cold War. We want to make sure that we remain the country where opportunity never ceases, and in fact, it expands for each successive generation, and innovation never stops. So the Endless Frontier Act seeks to encourage, extend, and then leverage the very American impulse to innovate, to create new things that we haven't seen since the space race. It will change the way the federal government invests in key technologies, applied research, not just curiosity-based based research or fundamental research, but outcome-based research. Research designed to solve particular problems. This is something that historically our federal government has invested substantially in. Right now, our country invests around 0.6% of our global GDP in R&D. That's down from 2% in the 1950s. Now, the private sector has taken up some of the slack, but so much of that is driven by quarterly returns and intended to meet the demand of the consumer market, as opposed to investments in some of these technology areas that have a 10-year plus payoff, that require a significant weight of investment, areas, candidly, where venture capitalists are not investing heavily. And so there's a role for the federal government to invest in areas like AI and quantum computing and robotics, biotech, advanced manufacturing. This will be possible moving forward because of a bipartisan $81 billion strategic investment in the National Science Foundation that will bolster science and tech research and development, including $29 billion in a new technology and innovation directorate at the National Science Foundation. The Endless Frontier Act, in addition to delivering that key investment, will deliver an additional $10 billion to establish regional tech hubs that you'll hear the governor and some others reference from time to time. This would allow our country to launch innovative companies, revive American manufacturing, and create new jobs to jumpstart local communities across the heartland. Years ago, our nation understood the importance of doing this, and it led to the creation of other tech hubs. You're familiar with the names: Boston, Silicon Valley, the Research Triangle. This is all seeded with federal investments. So we're just borrowing from our own economic history. And this will be, of course, especially important to places like Indiana. You see, just 5 cities currently, Boston, San Diego, San Francisco, San Jose, and Seattle, enjoyed more than 90% of the job growth in advanced sectors like tech, computer manufacturing, biotech, and telecom between 2005 and 2017. In 2019, just 3 coastal states, that of course would not include Indiana, though we do have the lovely coast and Lake Michigan and the Ohio River. But 3 coastal states, California, Massachusetts, and New York, made up more than 3/4 of all venture-backed investments in the U.S. EFA will help more Americans in more parts of America get more skin in the game. It'll give them an opportunity to meaningfully participate in this dynamic, hyper-competitive global economy that we now live in. And it will create opportunities to ensure that we are sort of firing on all cylinders across the country. It will create an incentive for more people to not just relocate to places like Indiana, but stay in Indiana. Create your ideas, realize your visions here. The race to put a man on the moon led to domino effect developments in aerospace, consumer electronics, and computing. And these advances kickstarted the economic engine of America in the decades following the Second World War. So the frontier technologies of this century have the same potential, perhaps even more so, to create new avenues of good work for rank and file Americans. This will influence everything from transportation to our national security base to education and healthcare. This investment is critical for both the future of work in the U.S. and for our national security as we compete with communist China. Now, the last thing I'll sort of touch on is the EFA contains provisions that will secure our supply chains and reduce our vulnerability on competitors that are unreliable and that even hold critical supplies hostage, or that might hold critical supplies hostage in the future. We, of course, are seeing just how important this is right now as we have faced a global semiconductor chip shortage. Critically, the larger package that we passed out of the United States Senate with roughly 70 bipartisan votes included a key investment, $52 billion, in the semiconductor research and fabrication area. I'm proud of the work the Senate's done in passing this legislation and crowding in input from both parties. In fact, we received hundreds of proposals to improve our work product, Republican and Democratic alike, and included them in the base legislation. And I think this legislation, perhaps more mundanely than the substance of the legislation, but I think importantly, to us as a republic. It demonstrates that we can get big things done in a bipartisan way at a time when people are cynical about our ability to do so. It also proves that we can come together and ensure that this century will not be the Chinese century. It will be the second American century. So with that, I am grateful for this opportunity. I hope I have not already overstayed my welcome. If time permits, I'd be happy to indulge any questions you might have. Thank you so much. Yes, sir. I love the directional mic. I don't even know where it's coming from.
Yeah.
This is fantastic.
It's a
I feel
tech
like a master of the universe.
It's a tech conference. We can follow you.
Yeah, that's right.
Senator, how do we make sure that one of these technology hubs ends up here in Indiana? Who do we need to be working with? Hook us up, right?
So we're ahead of the game. I started working on this, a couple of years ago. It was during the Trump administration. And almost from the earliest stages, I called up our governor. I called up some of our most prominent business leaders. I began conversations with our Speaker of the House, Todd Houston, and others, and said, look, I predict we're going to pass this. I think it's a great idea. I know there's a real focus right now on reshoring things, and we'll allow that conversation to play out. That was so much of the public conversation. Should we use this opportunity to start reshoring manufacturing and see how Indiana can benefit? I said, okay, allow that conversation to play out, but I'd like to focus on this other area. I see a huge opportunity for development. And our leaders agreed, and they made it a priority to position ourselves across groups like this, BioCrossroads, and then you have IEDC and our university partners. They've already been speaking about how we might best present ourselves to land one of the tech hubs. There are certain areas where it's fairly obvious we have core competencies that are either unmatched in the country or that put us in the top tier of expertise. One area might be battery storage. Another area might be advanced manufacturing. I can conceive of some other areas, autonomous, and I'm not going to exhaust the list because you'll ask why I've left certain things out, right? But there are other areas. So I suspect what we'll end up doing as we pitch to the Department of Commerce for a tech hub is we will probably put together a few different proposals and then sort of survey the landscape and see if see where we're strongest as compared to other states who are also pitching. And then we'll narrow it down to one lane that we choose to swim in and say, we're going to put all our eggs in this basket and make sure we tend to that basket and really land the tech hub. And so that's how it will work. I haven't gotten specific as to the criteria because though we establish certain factors that must be met in the legislation, including, for example, you need to have a trained workforce in a particular area, including that you need to have some industry expertise in a particular area. We have some vague categories like that, but we're not prescriptive. It's the job of the Department of Commerce to actually design the competition. And rather than taking our 4 or 5 different criteria and coming up with more specific exclusionary criteria, getting more specific, you must have this, they may instead adopt an approach that many of you are more familiar with, which is more like a business model pitch, right? You come in and we'll accept all comers as long as you hit these 5 criteria. We just want to hear from you, right? Gina Raimondo has a background in venture capital and private equity. She's former governor of Rhode Island, now our Secretary of Commerce. So she's very well equipped to put together a fair competition. We've already been given a lot of assurance that Indiana, coming out of the gates, looks very strong. So that's all the specificity I can give you at this point. But know that even before this legislation gets signed into law, we have people already working to get this done. And this is the top priority. I think the governor would affirm that. This is the top priority of the IEDC, to land one of these tech hubs.
Good afternoon, Senator Young. Thank you for taking my question.
Yes, sir.
Given what we have experienced with the global pandemic, probably, let's say, unveiling a lot of the vulnerabilities that exist, what partnership maybe do you imagine or is in the works between the federal government and tech companies to impact the infrastructure of the state? Let's just say the state of Indiana, maybe for like broadband access for children who are out of school, as well as maybe even like broadband being considered a utility. So it opens up more access.
So thank you for the question. Here again, bipartisan issue. Republicans and Democrats alike believe that we need to invest robustly and in a timely fashion in infrastructure. I think everyone would agree that in the 21st century, broadband is core infrastructure. It's not human infrastructure. It doesn't fall into that debatable category about whether or not it's a meritorious investment of your hard-earned money. So we all agree there needs to be investment. That priority has been incorporated into the bipartisan infrastructure package, which I helped negotiate with my Democratic colleagues. I actually sat on the broadband working group, and so my staff was able to include in there certain provisions that I thought would lead to less build out of broadband and diminished access. I thought one of those provisions, for example, was putting price caps. I thought that would disincentivize investment into many areas. So we had to change how companies that were contracted to build out broadband would be compensated. But the objective here is to ensure that wherever someone lives, they have access to broadband. That's the first priority. So as opposed to ensuring that everyone has the same quality of broadband, the first priority is to make sure that everyone has broadband access, right? So the unserved. The second priority is to take care of the underserved with the remaining resources that we invest in this. I think this legislation some form of it is likely to pass this Congress. It's pretty popular. And if for whatever reason it falls on its face on account of our toxic politics and or some offensive provisions that remain included in the legislation, then it will pass in fairly short order over the next couple of years. But I do understand there's an opportunity cost to waiting. I also think that the weight of investment is so much greater than even a state like Indiana that's been very forward-leaning and figured out a way to make key and targeted investments around our state. It's just going to be a complete game changer for our country because it's a much more sizable investment than we've experienced thus far. So I've done my best to answer your question, but just know that this is the most popular and probably the most consequential infrastructure investment we can make as a country. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming this afternoon. quick question. In that package, is there anything allocated to develop? Sorry, I'll hold it up. Is there anything allocated to developing Web 3.0, so the decentralized internet? And then just quickly, while you're here, what are your thoughts on taxation on cryptocurrencies? Thank you.
Yeah. So Web 3.0, for me to answer that, I'd have to figure out what it is. So I don't know. I mean, 5G, I know some people are out there saying, no, our technology will get you 6G. So I don't know exactly what that means. So that's in no way to poke fun. It's probably a very meaningful concept, but I rely on many of you for counsel. So get in touch with my office. Let me know. I'll learn. I hope humility is appreciated among your elected officials. Rather than avoiding the question or faking it, I don't know. And I'm on the Commerce Committee. And I guarantee no one else knows on the Commerce Committee. Maybe one person knows, all right? So, and then the next question was about taxation of cryptocurrency. Look, if you want less of something, you tax it, right? If you want more of something, you subsidize it. And oftentimes, the best thing to do, the most efficient thing to do, of course, is to just follow the market, knowing that there are market failures from time to time. All right, so we'll start with that principle. Right now, we're trying to come up with a regulatory atmosphere for crypto that makes sense, and that's not easy. We've delegated this to a bunch of big brains over at the Department of Treasury. And one of the considerations they really have to keep into account is we don't want to lose our reserve currency status as a country, right? At the same time, we recognize that there are real advantages to crypto. It empowers individuals. Transaction costs go to almost nothing. It offers certainly a measure of privacy to people. There's so many advantages to this, and it creates a new kind of business opportunity, a new sector, right? It's a better customer experience and so forth. But we're looking for their guidance in terms of regulation and even issues of taxation before we act on this. So before I demonstrated my humility in that field, I also wanted to demonstrate that there are things going on, and there's been communication between Treasury and folks like myself who are really interested in this area. But that area of reserve currency, I think, is really important. The Chinese have come up, as most of you know, with what they're styling as a cryptocurrency, a government sort of cryptocurrency. But it's really not. It's an electronic payment system as opposed to a real currency. And just as an aside, they're probably going to wrap their authoritarian social credit score around all the information they gather on their citizens or others who utilize the currency. So it's very dystopian when you think about what they're doing. So oftentimes their technology is used, as with all technology, it can be used for serving good or ill purposes. It looks like this is designed to enhance the communist control of their own people. Yeah. Yes.
Clean tech and renewable energy as relating to national security?
Oh, sure. So one of Senator Schumer and I define 10 areas where we think it's important for this tech directorate to invest. Now, I know this sounds like maybe to some at first blush, like, wait a second, you got a bunch of legislators who just came up with 10 areas. This sounds a lot like, the 10-year plans and how did you come up with these areas? Was it informed by the private sector? What we did is one of the things we did is we did look at the China 2025 sort of report, right? And see the areas where the Chinese are investing, many of which have national security implications, but others are just areas of sectoral dominance that the Chinese Communist Party would like to have moving forward. So they're subsidizing that. But we also consulted extensively with technologists, venture capitalists, those, if you want to consider tech to be a vertical, those in the tech field, university partners, and others. And we're making some strategic bets here. In one of those areas, it is green energy technologies, right? So we're calling for far more applied research in this area, understanding that there are spillover benefits that won't be captured by individual investors or businesses that will impact all of our lives in a positive way. If we can, develop this sector to create more jobs and investment opportunities and whatever, but also, in the service you provide, climate mitigation and so forth also benefits all of us. So in short, yes, this is one of the key areas of investment that we regard as important. And we're not crowding out, I should really emphasize, we're not crowding out venture capital here. In fact, this legislation was the top priority of the National Venture Capital Association. So the idea here is to give more targets for venture capital after the strategic bets are collectively made by all of us through our university systems and also through our DOE national labs. I hope that answered your question.
Senator, there's time for one last question.
First, just thank you very much for being here and for your humility and saying that you didn't know something. I think that honesty really is very important. The question being I guess one more comment. Also saying that not many of your peers knew the answer is kind of scary. Just to hear that.
Yeah, look,
aloud.
If I hop on this right now, am I on web 1.0 or 2.0?
No.
I mean, I just saw it every day evolved and got a little better.
And not to be critical of that.
Is there a step change that occurs at a particular moment? Is there a fulcrum moment in the web? I don't know. It sounds to me like branding, but whatever.
a question being, though, how best would the tech community in Indiana or ITIA as an organization, how best would we communicate changes in technology and just with it's going to only get faster in the pace of change? How best can we communicate or advocate to yourself and other peers at the federal level? I think we all have a very strong relationship with our state and local leaders, but at least my perception is we don't have as strong of a relationship at the federal level.
Yeah. Well, I'll do everything I can to change that. I mean, it's a large state with a lot of different equities and interests and sectors and, so forth. But, I need to continue to work through organizations like ITIA. I got the acronym right. I'm sorry. That would be embarrassing if I did not. I did. So that's an effective conduit. But I hold, if you want to pull together a bunch of entrepreneurs, innovators, investors in this space and just talk for a while, I do stuff like that, right? And in fact, I really enjoy it. I used to do a lot of town hall meetings until they became excuses just to, create YouTube moments and be gotcha and whatever. But I like to actually learn from my constituents, and so I can better serve them and have a back and forth exchange. So we do tons of roundtable conversations all around the state, and I'd welcome that opportunity. Okay, so just get in touch with our office and recognize it's a big state with a lot of invitations. So, but we'll get around to it. All right. Yeah. And if there's anything in the meanwhile that you want to send to us that you think I should read. I read sort of voraciously and love to learn, like the definition of Web 3.0, for example. Just either talk to someone in the field. My state director here is here, Andrew Kosak. Andrew's raising his hand in the back. And we'll come to you. If I can't come to you, one of our staff will come to you. Or get in touch to our website, young.senate.gov. It can be found on Web 3.0. Bye.